lot going on, and Greylock's in the middle of all of it. But I got to ask you, so I was just on TV in SF like not an hour ago when the news crossed that Comcast is pulling out of the Time Warner deal, and so Comcast is trying to acquire Time Warner. And to me, the ramifications of it, I know we didn't plan to talk about this, and we may have nothing on it, but to me, the ramifications of the deal seemed like they were enormous for Silicon Valley, because one company would have controlled broadband pipes for 57% of Americans. Did you see anything with that you liked or didn't like, or?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about net neutrality and around kind of what broadband is and what cable is. You know, I think there's almost two parts of this conversation. I think the cable part is very interesting because people are trying to figure out how to preserve the bundle and preserve the fact that by owning the pipes to the home, they had all this distribution. And that's sort of fading with the internet, Netflix and Hulu rising, the Comcast bundle going down.
In other words, the value of the cable operator isn't the content they can do, it's just the fact that they own the pipe and a monopoly on the pipe.
Right, and so on that side, it's very interesting to see them sort of merging to preserve those entities, which still feel very threatened over the next decade. You know, both on Netflix, Hulu, and a lot of even investments that we're making, and other stuff in the overall media space and media disruption. You know, on the broadband side, it feels actually like a positive because once they consolidate, they actually can do more innovation, kind of. You know, as one, to really bring better pipes and better systems and services into the home. Because
we know that every time Comcast can do something better for the customer and improve service, they do.
You know, I think people love to diss Comcast. You know, it's very hard to run one of these companies that truly serves, tens or millions of people in their homes.
In a highly regulated environment where it's hard to make changes,
And they have literally people in cars driving out to your house to try to fix things. If you actually get the latest Xfinity services and actually use them to control your TV, or you get the security alarm system, it's actually like changes your perception of Comcast as the backwards old company. It'd actually be pretty impressive. So like I actually think we like to dump on them for lack of innovation a lot, but it's actually fairly impressive. And in fact, some of the merger was how do we actually get to consolidate, reach more homes, and bring these services out so they can do more of the innovation in more homes. And they always struggle because they can, even them, they can only bring a service out to whatever 30%, whatever the regulated number of homes they can reach is. So I actually saw some real positives in it, but I think with it disbanding, it's just going to make the innovation sort of a little bit more diffuse and happen through lots of startups, which is great for me.
This is the joy of being back to being a journalist. I was an investor for a short while. An investor actually had to take one side of an argument. Yeah. Now I can take both and say, well, like I said, that was going to happen. No, but I would agree with although I would say the numbers, when studies are done in customer service, the two worst companies in all of telecom, utilities, and everything. Worst is Comcast, second worst was Time Warner Cable. And the other thing I'd say is like the speeds that we get in the U.S. are so much slower than other countries. And not just like the outliers like the South Korea or some Scandinavian country, but throughout Europe, much of your Western Europe has faster internet connection speeds. When you are making investments and looking at companies, do you consider the limitations on speeds in this market and think about that as a barrier?
We don't really look at the limitations as a barrier because I just still think it's progressing and getting faster and faster every year. I mean, we just led the investment in Meerkat, which
I was hoping you'd make that turn.
Which is a live video from your phone. You can be broadcasting live video. I could pull out my phone right now if it wasn't charging in the back and just start broadcasting to the internet over LTE. And this is part of one of those impressive things, which is for the first time in our history, our wireless pipes are fast enough that if I actually start broadcasting, it's a true live video stream that you can watch on your phone. That's actually pretty high quality. It's actually it's been amazing how high quality the content I can watch on Meerkat is. Yesterday I was actually with Ben on stage at a different event.
Ben, you're the CEO of Meerkat.
Ben Rubin, who's the CEO of Meerkat.
Was on Ben on Bloomberg West a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and we were broadcast. He was broadcasting live from the stage, and people who were watching it said it was actually sometimes better quality than the live stream that was coming out of the auditorium. That was through kind of.
His answers were better.
Huh?
His answers were better. No,
I wish, but the actual content was, and that's because the bandwidth is finally here. And so even though we want it to be a lot faster and a lot better, we kind of sometimes forget how amazing it is that our bandwidth is as fast as it is, and the carriers and Comcast, AT&T Wireless, Verizon have actually spent billions of dollars improving our infrastructure every year, which we kind of sometimes just poo-poo and say, oh, we just want to pay for the internet. And we forget that at some point there are actual atoms and electrons firing that let us do all the stuff we do.
And dudes with belts and tools that have to climb down manholes and climb up telephone poles. So let's drill down a little bit on Meerkat, because it's a very interesting company in this wonderful, I'm not calling it a bubble, but this exciting era of technology in 2015. This thing called Meerkat appears in all of our Twitter feeds and in our, the covers that we read from all the IP sites and everything. Bloomberg West, we get them on Bloomberg West. It's hottest story coming out of South by Southwest. And a couple things happen that are really dramatic. They raise a round. Good size round, was it 15 million?
It was like 12 million.
12 million, yeah. There was a good size round with a handful of investors pretty quickly, but two things happened with Twitter that I'm going to tell you what they were, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong. So it seemed like one of them was Meerkat was asking you to connect and tell us who all your friends were, and then they would map that and memorize those connections. And Twitter's like, That's our secret. The Twitter graph is our secret sauce. You are not going to know all your friends and their connections are. So they shut that down, which seemed like the sort of support of Meerkat. And then the second thing happened. Twitter instantly released Periscope, which is something they'd acquired and maybe weren't ready to launch publicly, or maybe they were, but they instantly released it, and Periscope seems like a similar service. Tell me why I'm wrong on both those.
Well, I mean, those are all the right facts of the story. But the story of Meerkat's much longer than that. I met the founder over a year ago, and he was trying to figure out how to do live video from your phone over the internet and bring it to everybody else's phones. And he was experimenting with one to few, one to many. Thank you. And he had this brilliant. He just was really trying to push this vision, and they actually shut down their old product, which was called Yevo, and came up with Meerkat as sort of, let's go experiment with this. And when they put it in people's hands, for the first time, so many people who love experimenting with these new technologies didn't just say, oh, that's cool. They said, wow, that's different. I've never had this experience before where my phone's now broadcasting, and I'm in a room full of people, and we're all here live to kind of experience this together. But in the case of Meerkat, we're all live on our own phones watching it together simultaneously.
It's like FaceTime for a crowd.
It's like FaceTime. It's a great way to think about it. Is sort of this one-to-many broadcasting in the palm of your hand, and not just on the broadcaster side, but as a live participatory experience that we're there together. I was watching a tour of a house. It was a famous house, and the person walked by the bathroom, and then the comments were like, "Show us the bathroom," and the person turned around and opened the door to the bathroom, and it was this like amazing thing of like
famous house.
It was the Playboy Mansion, which is a little bit of an odd
I knew
story.
that it had to be better than a famous house. It wasn't falling water.
I say that because it was kind of funny, but like I would have been flipping through cable and seen, oh, look, a tour of the Playboy Mansion. I would have just skipped it, but because it was live on the phone and she was like turning around and changing the actual content because of the comments, it was participatory, and that just makes media feel so different. This is your world, and imagine that. So Ben's been working on this for a long time. Get this amazing moment. And I knew that Twitter had, at least I'd heard the rumors that Twitter had acquired this company. I'd gotten to see a little bit of the product from some people who had it in their hands. And it was an amazing product. And I looked at Ben and said, look, the world is not just Twitter. Twitter's going to do an amazing thing here. I think Periscope's going to be a huge positive thing for Twitter. But I said, the world of putting this in people's hands goes much more broadly. And as great as I think Twitter is, I think there's a chance to go build an independent company that just focuses on this live video, that just figures out what communities there are, that finds communities that are outside Twitter, which Twitter may not go to, including people who have fan bases on Facebook, people who have communities that they mostly correspond with over text or over email. Meerkat can bring those all together as well as what you can do through Twitter, and that was kind of the thesis of the investment.
So yeah, because when I look at that, I'm like, like Twitter has too much money. They don't know how they're going to grow. They've got some ideas how they're going to grow, but they would certainly like a few more legs to that growth. And they've clearly got the tiger by the tail in this notion of the Meerkat Periscope experience that people seem to be glomming onto really quickly. So the kind of investing I did was very different. I was straight equities, hedge fund, but why? These guys have everything going for them. They've got the social graph that they've collected. They've got the enormous amounts of user data. They can see who's more likely to use things like this. They've got lots of cash to deploy. And you bet on the number 2 horse? I mean, what like?
I don't think of it as the number 2 horse. I think of it as one of the 2 horses in the race. And look, as a venture capitalist, if you don't believe that a small, scrappy team laser focused on just one thing and can go and hire the best and brightest people to join them on that journey has a chance to make something that's much bigger and greater, you shouldn't be in the venture business. And whether that means a big company is a threat, proving to the market that this thing that should exist can exist, trying to hire that first grade engineer, that 10th grade engineer. Like if you literally just always think, oh, it's not possible, and the big companies will either invent or acquire and promote everything else great, then you might as well not be a venture capitalist. And so, I just have that dream. And as I said, if I had just met Ben in the spirit of all this hype around Meerkat, maybe I'd have been fooling myself, but I'd already known him for a year and a half, and the way that he was trying to solve these problems and what he was thinking about. And I'd always wanted to back him and was basically waiting for a moment where I felt like the world was ready for live video, and that's what he got to prove with Meerkat. And from today, we have a long ways to go to really show the world what live participatory video can do. It's a brand new medium, but I just, I can't imagine that that's not possible, and I couldn't be happier to be part of Ben and his team to go do it.
All right, so let's keep going here. So, and I love that answer. I mean, this is why when people tell me they want the Silicon Valley of Scottsdale, or it's the Silicon Valley of South Florida, or it's the Silicon Alley, right? It's like only Californians can be retarded enough to think that one dude or 2 guys in a dog in a garage can launch big businesses. But of course, optimism has its place. So you put a lot of money into this thing, or more than $100, and you decide to take them to help them get to the next level. What do you do then and say, okay, Ben, like you alluded to, let's think about other graphs, other social networks that aren't Twitter?
Yeah, so what's really neat is, when we invest in the company, we aren't just joining, the board and kind of say, okay, here's some money, good luck, call me if you have questions. Look, I'm hands-on. I actually was speaking to Ben for a few minutes on the way up here after doing a couple of BD calls with relationships that I had, because we don't have a full-time
business development calls.
Business development.
Yeah.
We don't have a full-time business development person in the company right now. And so I've been, I brought in a couple of advisors who are friends of mine from the industry who have a lot of relevant experience, and I've been, making a bunch of calls, to talk to other partners and potential companies and introduce the ones to Ben and the team that I think are right. I've been helping.
So give me a sense of what kind of business are you talking about?
So we're launching a new Android version of Meerkat. We put out a wait list last week. That's going to be coming soon. And I've been talking to some people in the Android community who could potentially be partners with us and helping to promote this and get this out more widely on Android phones, because it does an amazing thing. If you have an Android phone out there, this is one of the first things to show off how good the quality is of the video camera and what you can do, and that it's not just iPhones.
So maybe hardware people is what you're talking about.
They could be hardware people or people in sort of the other kind of Android communities and promotion. And so I'm working on those kind of deals for the company. We're doing a lot of recruiting. So I've probably interviewed 10 people so far since we made the investment.
New hires.
Meetings,
okay.
to try to figure out who we actually hire for the company. And we've made a couple hires already that I'm super excited about.
And what kind of hires do you feel like your expertise and experience can help vet better or have better connections to bring in?
Yeah, so this is something, it's Greylock. We actually have a small team of just incredible recruiting talent, both at the engineer and core engineer level, as well as at the executive level. One of the great things, when a company like Meerkat is sort of in the public's eye, how do we bring in the right kind of executive talent who can help us go do partnerships and could be great partners with Ben to go do that? Or how do we bring in the right communications folks who can help field, all the inquiries coming from Bloomberg West and everybody else? Or how do we bring in a couple of other folks? And this team's actually from Israel, so they're actually hiring some other engineers and folks in Israel. But how can I sort of help lend the credibility of a West Coast, a Silicon Valley investment and help sell them on why we're so excited about the company? Now's a great time to join.
Is this kind of, and then what? Like, do you start to think also about milestones and put some things on the walls that we got to get to this, and here's what we're going to get this big, we're going to have this many customers, we're going to. Is that standard operating procedure after an early venture round like this?
Yeah, but it's not the venture job. It's not the venture capitalist's job to do that. It's the founder's job to really do that and kind of reset the strategy and sort of paint the picture of where they're going to go. Step one is kind of go through all the stuff that's happening live in the world, start to get a stronger team in place, and then really build the long-term strategy. And then, what's fun is because I actually spent most of my career, working in product roles at companies that, started, again, really, really small and turned out to be pretty big.
Such as?
I was employee 15 at LinkedIn. I was, employee 80-something at Twitter. I got to work on Facebook in the early days and help launch Facebook Connect. And so kind of through those experiences, I've been helping Ben and the team kind of with product stuff too. And I know that, I can't say you should do this. I can just give them advice and ideas and thoughts and brainstorm with them from my experience and trust that the team will, keep executing and do great stuff.
As it relates to LinkedIn, LinkedIn, first of all, LinkedIn's killing it.
Amazing.
Like every single business unit growing at better than 20% year over year, tons of free cash flow, huge goals ahead of them, according to Jeff Weiner, the CEO. LinkedIn was not always, and the network effects are the network effects, right? But LinkedIn didn't always look like it was going to be the success it is right now. I remember going to the offices in like 2004, doing a piece for CNBC, and it was pretty sleepy. Like the network thing was happening, right? Like I remember Konstantin Gerke, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
I worked with him. So telling me about, we went into Turkey. Like we had 2 guys in Turkey who opened up LinkedIn accounts, and within a month we had 500 people in Turkey. And I was like, oh, because friends of friends, that's how it works. But companies struggle enormously, hit the really bad timing in terms of the technology cycles, and yet I wonder that if you have particular scar tissue or knowledge of how the world works that is informed by that you are trying to apply now or in a different part of the cycle.
Well, I love that because I love just the fact that you said I went into LinkedIn in 2004 and nobody thought it was going to work, and then here it is that it worked. Because I'll tell you what, there were 25 people at the company at the time, and every single one of us sure thought it would work.
Absolutely.
And what we looked for was we had a very specific strategy to understand why every single day as we grow more, the network gets more valuable and more important. And if we get to a valuable and important enough network, the kinds of products and services we're able to build that we'll eventually charge money for will be so powerful because of the network, and the network will be so defensible because it's very hard for someone else to build that network. And we just believe that in our veins, and every single decision we made, product feature we did, was tuned very tightly to that. And so we weren't ever sitting there we have a lot of doubters. And it's funny that I think every single company goes through these phases of, it sounds good, like Meerkat gets a lot of hype, and then it says, oh, it's dead already. But the team just goes back and just keeps on going on that vision and say, we don't care what the rest of the world thinks, as long as we think we're doing something important, and every single day we're trying to make the best decisions to make it better. Not every one of those journeys is going to end up in a company like a LinkedIn or like a Twitter, or especially very few will end up like a Facebook or a Google, but some will. And from a VC standpoint, we just look for those journeys where every single day we're laser focused, trying to get further and trying to really understand how do we make these companies better, and ignore all the doubters, because there's always doubters until they all love you, and then when they love you, you almost know there's something wrong because then they start picking you apart and saying you're too big, you're whatever. This is your business.
Well, no, it's a particular voice, right? It's like I always thought the death of any person or thing or company is to be the top of the New York Magazine's hot list.
Yeah.
Because the only place to go from hot is not.
Totally right.
I want to get some audience questions here without a lot of time left, but I love this. You're kind of alluding to this. Sort of, what should a company be doing? What should an entrepreneur be focusing on when they're looking at seed funding and growth capital?
Yeah. So. Look, I think to understand what entrepreneurs should focus on is to really think about how venture capitalists think. Because I think, you actually want alignment. I think it's really important to have founder-investor alignment. And the goal is investors want to be part of building great big companies that get them the kinds of returns that they owe back to their investors. It's easy to think about venture capitalists as having the money, but in fact, we're investing the money on behalf of other people. And so you have to remember, I just have a job, which is, how do I help invest our limited partners' money to give them a lot more money, and on the way, we get to help build great big companies that do that.
Right.
And so we're going to work backwards. When you're raising seed funding, you want to help me understand why you have this great idea that if it works, the whole world can be different. If live video becomes a thing that we're all doing all the time and it works, you can imagine a massive network of people who can tune in on their phone to anything going on anywhere in the world. And that's a pretty big, exciting vision, even in spite of the fact that like it seems crazy right now, because you just need one person to do that. When you start to raise growth capital, you still want to have that exact same, if it works, we can be this great big company. But you don't need to sell it as much anymore. You need to start saying, and here's the couple of data points I have where it's already working. Here's why the world's ready. Here's why I think if it's a 2-horse race, I'm one of the 2 horses. If it's a 1-horse race, I can go win the whole market because of this, this, and this. I'm differentiated for these reasons. My metrics look like this. But you really want to paint that picture.
Do you, great question here about Greylock being different than other VCs. And I wonder about that. How big is the fund that you work on?
We're a $1 billion fund.
Is that all? It's US?
It's $1 billion US. We have about 10 partners. And
so how many investments will that be ultimately?
It would be between 40 and 50 investments total.
So those are pretty concentrated investments at that size.
You know, I think what's unique about us is every single partner of mine at Greylock has come from a background that, of building companies that I think is at least as strong as mine. Reid Hoffman, who was the founder of LinkedIn, which we've talked about, is one of my partners. John Lilly, who was the CEO of Mozilla for a number of years when it went from, a very small number of downloads to over 500 million people using Firefox every day, is one of my partners. And everybody's been in the product seat kind of helping to go build these companies. And all we want to do is be strategic partners to new founders. I want to be the guy who you call at 11 p.m. when you're struggling with something. Should I hire this person? Should I make this decision? I need help because Facebook's blocking me. Can you unlock something at Facebook? I just want to be somebody who you think of, I want to call him and get him involved, as opposed to, oh my God, I dread giving my investor the news. Because we just want to be your teammate.
Right.
We figure that if we can find the right founders and journeys we want to work with and be great teammates, we have a chance to go build great big companies, which then produces returns for us.
But the focus also, because of the size of the fund and the history and whatever, is great big companies. It's not, I'm gonna build a module for Workday software that, or someone's gonna buy me, whether it's gonna be Oracle or Workday or,
Yep. Yeah, Workday is one of our investments. It turned out great, and it is a great big company. And that's what we look for. And if we can't tell the story whenever we propose an investment, if we can't tell the story to each other of what we think could be a great big company, if we're lucky and if things play out right, and why the individual partner believes that's a possibility, then we don't do the investment. If one of the partners, from all of our backgrounds, that person feels so strongly that this is a chance for one of those, then we all lean in, support that person, and go for it.
Finally, how do you stay plugged in? What do you, besides, of course, watching Bloomberg West and listening to Bloomberg Radio around the clock, AM 960 in the Bay Area, or Sirius Satellite Radio, don't want to miss it. But besides that, how do you stay plugged in? Like, what do you read? How do you make sure you're meeting the right entrepreneurs and so on?
All my deal flow comes from Bloomberg.
We're here to help.
Look,
there's a big line out the door after the show is out, and the entrepreneurs are leaving the building.
A whole bunch of things. I try to keep my network fresh. I meet as many great entrepreneurs as I can. As I talked about Meerkat, I was excited about live video. I met Ben when he was building Yevo, and we got to talk about the future of live video. Then all of a sudden Meerkat blows up, and we decide to partner up together. So I'm trying to meet as many people as I can, although I only have so much time in the day and a family and everything else that I can't do everything. I try to come here and both speak, but also to meet people, in the audience. I look at Product Hunt a lot. I read TechCrunch a lot. I look at TechMeme. I read all the Bloomberg stuff. Bloomberg just had great coverage of another of my investments called Operator that we just announced today, that Brad Stone wrote a nice piece on. But I'm constantly looking for things that are happening, and I talk to as many people as I can to say, hey, what are you seeing? What's cool? I go talk to kids on college or teenagers, and I'm sort of that creepy guy who's like, hey, what's on your phone? And have them show me stuff on their phone, because that's the only way that I learn kind of what the future is. And then we do some data and we do some analysis, but I really think the best thing is just to keep meeting people and listening and learning and figuring out who's doing awesome stuff.
When I went to NYU, and one of my majors was music business. And so I had all these old-time CBS Records A&R guys. I found Bruce Springsteen when he was climbing out of the primordial ooze,
Yeah.
And they'd have these stories, but they were just the same. They would. I remember this guy, Ahmet Erdogan. He'd say, I would drive around the West Village. If there's a line of people outside, I'd go in there to see what it was, because that's where that was going to be the next big thing. Very cool stuff, Josh Elman from Greylock. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Paul.